Welcome to Talking Digital, a core optimization podcast looking at a behind-the-scenes look at life in a digital agency, one of Ireland's largest independent digital agencies. Joined by some of the team today, Gavin Stafford, our Head of Performance at the end. We've got James Kelly-Vernon, our Head of Client Services, and Paddy O'Brien, who is our Senior Account PR Director. I'm Kieran O'Brien, I'm the Group Marketing Director, and we're going to see how the old podcast game works for core optimization. So to start it off, we'll start with Gav at the end. A little bit of background. How did you end up in a digital agency? What's your background in this game?
It's a quite interesting one, Kieran. So when I left school, when I was 18, I went off to become a chef. I trained in Kettlebrew Street for a couple of years and thought that was my calling. It wasn't. I went into different things like construction, ended up working in sales, and then I ended up working in a security company where I actually got an interest in marketing there. It's probably the last place I'd expect to get an interest in, but I was kind of looking at how the security company, how they marketed themselves. A lot was word of mouth, how they got business. And I thought, why aren't they talking about themselves on social media? Why aren't they, in press? Why aren't they doing all these different things? So kind of got me to investigate myself as a kind of vocation, as a career. And then I went to IBAC College, then I enrolled in an I course, done a professional diploma in digital marketing, and then just made my way as an intern and all the way up the ranks to here.
Brilliant. James?
Yeah, similar enough actually. I started out as a chef, which I didn't know about, Gavin, so that's interesting. But no, when I was at school, I kind of, the subjects I was best at, it ended up being business studies and media studies. So it kind of felt like a natural progression into advertising and media. And then I studied advertising at university in Southampton in the UK. And from there, I basically started my career on the tools, if you like, at an e-commerce bookseller in the UK, until Amazon came and blew all the e-commerce booksellers out the water. And from there, I had another internal client-side role, an internal performance agency, a property company. So again, on the tools, doing a lot of email marketing, PPC, paid social, before moving to Australia. And when I went to Australia is when I went properly into agency, because they were the only ones who sponsored, frankly. And then I got really into agency and loved it, and loved the pace of it, loved everything about it. And yeah, I've been doing agency ever since. I think being on client side and on agency side has really held me in good stead for kind of understanding sort of the inner workings of both sides of the fence. So yeah, I think that's led me to where I am now, and lots of experience, a few different countries, and still buzzing with it now.
Good stuff. Paddy, who's not related, just in case anyone thinks he is. Paddy, your background?
Yeah, you hear about people going in the front door or the back door to their careers, but we seem to be talking about the fire escape route a lot here between the three of us. I studied to be a journalist, and kind of all I ever wanted to do throughout school. And I ended up working for a couple of publications here, and then I was in the Middle East working for a publication in the UAE. Went to London to work on London 2012 Olympics, and I kind of assumed that was the career path mapped out, that it was just going to keep going in a straight line. But I suppose it doesn't usually happen like that. And I came home, and while it wasn't quite recession time when I came home, we were still probably dealing with a little bit of the fallout of the recession. But what we were also dealing with was the death of print media and the journalism opportunities that had probably been really obvious to me when I was starting out or had been in school. Were evaporating pretty quickly, and the options were really limited. I considered my options, but I wasn't fully sure what those options really were. And journalists are naturally disposed to be suspicious of people that work in PR, rightly or wrongly, sometimes with good merit. But so for that reason, I'd never really considered jumping over the other side of the fence, if that's how we want to call it. But I was chatting to a friend of mine at a party who worked in a big agency in town. And isn't it funny the way these things go? You could study something for 4 years, but it's a conversation that you have at 1 o'clock in the morning that ends up being the deciding factor for where you end up. So yeah, she told me that the agency was looking for certain skill sets that I had because of my journalism background, particularly with the writing element. And yeah, I went in from there, went in at obviously at a low level, and just working my way through it, and had a great few years there. So I've been in agency since that was 2013, so when I, as I say, did that metaphorical jump over the fence. But yeah, similar to the two guys, it was the path less trodden, but delighted to be here chatting to you today.
No, it's interesting because my own background is PR as well. That's what I started off. My family had a PR company. I'd worked in the PR agencies up here. Took over the family business, started in PR, ended up getting clients that became more through the line marketing, ended up being the internal marketing lead for one of those clients for a long time, ended up hiring Core Optimization to be the agency for that client, ended up working for Core Optimization 5 years later. Here I am talking to much better people than me in terms of delivering for our clients. So I go across the various channels you work on, and Gavin, I might start with you in terms of performance, in terms of paid, in terms of social, everything that falls under your remit. I suppose, how does that deliver for a client these days in terms of, what you're delivering, what you're bringing to the table? Obviously, all clients, different sectors are different, but with the team you have under your guard here in Core, and with the, I suppose, the ever-changing nature of performance marketing, what do you bring to the table, Gav, basically?
That's a great question, Kieran. So essentially it's real client-centric. It's understanding the client's needs, what their business goals are, and how we can shape that as a team, as people, so meeting the clients where they really need to get their bottom line, So as you say, there's different industries, different clients, they'll have different needs. So it's adapting the kind of technologies and adapting the trends to how we kind of do that. So AI is a big thing for performance at the moment. It's understanding how that can drive things like, targeting, things like, reaching the right customer, and things like tracking and things like reporting as well. So I suppose, it's just really getting in front of the client from the very early stages, building that relationship and not staying the same. I suppose, the thing is to evolve with the client and evolve with the business offering, So if it's retail, for example, there's obviously challenges online, there's obviously competition, there's different things. So just staying abreast of insights, staying ahead of the game, and then it's always client-centric, always understand what the client wants, and anything we build as a strategy, anything we build as, as a marketing mix, it's always what the client has kind of told us that they want and what they want to achieve, and we build everything based on that. So that's really where we differ. It's understanding the client needs and understanding how we can bring them to the next level. And then you have the kind of short-term gains where there's demands. So if it's a retail client, you have ROAS targets, that they want to grow ROAS. So it's getting that low-hanging fruit, but also learning from those kind of short-term demand campaigns and how we hit the bigger picture, how we can grow the client from a business perspective over the year.
It's really interesting, all the points you made there, and as we've evolved as an agency into more channels and what we do, and it's leading on to Paddy, who heads up the PR side of the house for us, in terms of that paid media versus earned media.
Yeah.
And again, that's my background, so I'm always partial to hear another PR man tell the story about the dark side, as you called it. But in terms of your channel, in terms of what we deliver for our clients who avail of our PR offering, Paddy.
Yeah, PR, more than many other sectors, have probably evolved in quite a different direction over the past years, but particularly with the advent of AI and the high usage of it. It's probably jumped from 10 or 15 years ago, when it was a simple transactional element where X client wants Y pieces of coverage and away you go. I suppose it's really about, first of all, considering what the objectives are, whether it's something as kind of low-hanging fruit as maybe a brand or a product launch, up to and including the bigger kind of reputational management piece and the brand awareness piece. So yeah, it's certainly very relevant with AI and how Gemini, ChatGPT, etc. deliver search results to people. They prioritize human written content and trustworthy news sources. That immediately opens up a new world of PR that potentially didn't fully exist before. That real focus on searching for really kind of high quality, high clout publications, and ultimately deciding what best suits for the client. So the PR side, we are evolving that at the moment in Core Optimization, and it's where that sits between paid social, SEO, digital media, and I suppose that full service campaign or brand awareness piece that a brand might be going after. PR now plays a more crucial role than it ever did before.
Which leads us nicely into James, who has the toughest job. James, you're the head of client services. You're the puppet master as such, who pulls everything together. So just to give a little bit of insight into your team and how your team manage the clients. Obviously, Gav has the performance side. Paddy be doing the PR side. We'd have Brian from our SEO team leading that side of the house. But you're, as I said, the puppet master, overseeing it all. And I suppose a little bit of insight into a day in the life of James, and his team.
Yeah, I mean, a day in the life of account management is never the same, I guess. My team, and we're lucky in core optimization that we have people who've been on the tools before in the various departments as well. So now they've learned their skills and now they know how to communicate as an account manager as well with clients. So I think with my team and myself, we try and get under the hood of what is a client actually needing? What are they actually trying to achieve? A bit of an umbrella view of the bigger picture, I guess. We see when we interact with all of the departments, the paid social team, the paid search team, now the PR team as well, trying to just really understand where do we get the value for the client? How do we communicate what we're seeing from the results to the client in a way that they can use and gives them insight, and we can grow their business as a result of it. And I think trying to tell that story is the biggest part of client services, as well as understand the internal pressures that clients are under. I think that's always the big challenge between agency and client is what's going on their side of the fence. You might not always get full sight of, and once you do, and you can have those honest conversations, you can start to really help them in a better way. You can understand the nuances to their businesses and feed that back into the media buying that we do. So yeah, it's a real varied role, to be honest. And a lot of my team are regularly speaking to clients. They're regularly speaking to media vendors, and PR is actually interesting. What Paddy was saying there, PR is becoming a bit of a blurred space between what was native content almost now to PR, and it's all one and the same. It's online visibility, and I think at the upper funnel side of things, that's becoming more and more important. The trusted news sources, the trusted media. There's so much AI content now. I think a lot of that is feeding into the questions that we're being asked as account managers, and we have to be able to respond to them, right? So yeah, my team are just constantly upskilling, constantly speaking to the teams and trying to give our clients what they're looking for, really.
And I'm going to stick with you actually, James, on next, because we're putting together as an agency, our latest ebook, which is actually focusing on measurement, right? So moving on to measurement, and again, you're the man at the coalface with the client day in, day out. In terms of the challenges around measurement, and how you articulate that, again, tell the story from an account management perspective or a client services perspective, maybe a little bit of insight into different metrics for different clients, obviously, but how you approach that.
Yeah, it's different depending on the client, I guess. From a measurement point of view, it's the biggest problem everyone's always had is attribution. How do you actually measure all of the activity from your digital channels back to what they're seeing on the business side? Because Google want to claim they've taken the generated leads for a client, for example, or sales for an e-commerce client. But Meta is trying to do the same thing. And then all of a sudden you've got duplication and nothing makes sense when you're trying to tell the story. So attribution still hasn't really been solved, in my opinion. I don't think anyone's really doing it properly. You just kind of like pick a model and go with it, and that's your baseline. But from the other side of this is less around the metrics themselves and more around media effectiveness and what is happening to the bigger picture. So if we're running a lot of PR or we're doing a broad awareness paid social campaign, what is that doing to the search demand for the brand, and how is that growing, and how is it all interacting with each other? I think that's the story that we want to be able to tell to clients is, here's what you're doing with your activity, here's how it's influencing each other, and then here's how it's directly affecting your business. And you can measure all of it at different stages, but just sometimes stepping back and looking at the bigger picture is important too.
I'll jump in there to take on exactly what James said. You know, you might have looked back 10 or 15 years ago and it was a very simple job around what I mentioned a minute ago, X pieces of coverage. We're looking at AVE, we're looking at pure value, you know, and that sort of stuff is a little bit out of date now. Even taking the fundamental theory that an earned pure piece with authenticity and a voice that is authoritative in the industry is completely different to a paid ad. So to put an ad value on a pure piece is rightly considered maybe something that belongs in a different era. But it comes back to this full service campaign piece and the different job to be done depending on which brand you're dealing with. What is their internal KPIs? What is the job that they want to do? And we go from there.
Yeah, we're kind of guilty sometimes of, we can measure everything, so we measure everything. Yeah. And I think that's just a big thing in performance marketing is everyone, like you look at a target ROAS and you're trying to get your ROAS up and you're trying to drive CTRs and get more clicks to websites, and that's all great, but what does it really mean in the bigger picture? And I think if people can start asking that question more, I think it's only going to be a good thing.
That's why it's important to always like the communication with the clients from their business goals. Like we could see on our side from an attribution point of view, like that ROAS is strong, sales are up, revenue is up, but the client might have a different view of that. on their side, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's trying to join the dots and trying to get that bigger picture. And like as James mentioned, like it probably hasn't been solved yet. Like it's a big kind of challenge for marketers around the world, you know. But we work as best with clients as possible to try to join those dots, you know, to try to get that information back. How has that impacted the bottom line? How has that grown on your side? Here's what we see on our side. And at least try to have some sort of journey, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, probably show my age now, but you go back to, Jesus, what, 20, 25 years ago when I started out of college, started in PR, and then I was in marketing, and you're looking at measurement, and you're looking at, okay, there's your J&LR figures. So, you know, there's your, you know, what they're guessing really, or the guesstimate, or of who's listened to FM 104, we're going to do a campaign in FM 104, or there's your bus site, and that's going to go through so many people. And I was speaking at a thing, I think Gav was at it with me at an e-commerce live event prior to Christmas, and I was chairing a panel, and one of our clients, Ella and Joe, were on it, and we were just chatting in the panel discussion around how measurement is so intense now. It's so intense, and as James pointed out, everything can be measured. And I was back in my day, I was looking at, well, there's a billboard there and we think X amount of people walk by it, but no one really knows. Now we have programmatic outdoor.
Yeah.
So if you want to get the people holding a cup of coffee and walking down Grafton Street at 9:30, 9, you can do it. So yes, there's a lot more measurement. And so we're in a much better place. There's nowhere near as much guesswork as there was there back in the, you know, the traditional marketing days of the early noughties and prior to that. But you're right. You're never going to have. There's always going to be a new metric. There's always going to be a new thing. And some people look at MER. Some people look at MER. Some people look at ROAS. Some people look at a pure revenue number, depending on where the cycle of that business is. You know, some businesses want a revenue number because they're expanding or they're looking for seed funding or whatever. Others are a very mature business, and it's margin play and it's sanity, not vanity, the old adage. So it is a completely different thing. And I suppose to Gav's point there, and it's something that I suppose we pride ourselves as an agency, and Carol and David, who founded the business, would have prided themselves, is that communication piece. It's just understanding what the client wants, I always say this, the marketing, whether it's a marketing director or a CMO or whatever their role is, or an e-commerce manager, they're usually making a presentation to a CFO of some variety. What do you need in your deck to prove that the investment in an agency or investment in a campaign or an in-house team, whatever, is washing its face? And the more you understand that, I think that's one thing, and the three that you're very good at, is that scoping of new clients. When clients come in, scoping the actual the KPIs, scoping what they really, really need, and taking a step back and understanding the business, understanding that, and that's key. And I suppose the longer you're at this game, and the more experience you have, the more you see, actually, if you don't understand the client you're working with and the challenges they have internally, you're snookers. You're against.
I encourage my teams to just ask questions. Like always ask questions of your clients. They're always going to be happy that you're showing an interest in their business and you're trying to do the best for them. So questions are key.
I think encouraging questions from clients also, you know.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
It's you know, you have to think, like, it's our job to educate the client on what those metrics mean. They know their business goals. The clients will always know what they need from a bottom line, but they probably don't understand the metrics, or probably, like, that's from, as marketers, like, that's our job, you know, to educate them on, okay, ROAS is this, revenue is this, CTR, all of these different things, and how it kind of ladders up to their overall goal. So encouraging questions is just as important. You
want to be seen as an additional arm to their business. In one sense, you want to solve problems together and come up with ideas, even for problems that potentially don't exist. We know that a lot of our clients are really busy. It's tough to spot every single thing that's maybe in front of your nose. So absolutely, that's one piece that we're there for, is to kind of drive that side of it as well.
And that's another thing we do pride ourselves in agencies, that's being that extension, you know, not just a service provider, not just, you know, we're not just your agency, like, we're bought into your business, you know, we're invested, we want this to grow, we want to grow with you, you know.
A lot of agency workers, or own another agency work, they work for clients and take pride in seeing their clients doing well. And I think definitely for the team we have, and nearly 60 bodies now, they definitely take pride in some of the brands and seeing how we've been part of that growth journey. For some of the brands we've worked with are 3, 4, 5 times the size than when we started working with them 3 or 4 years ago. And that's a huge sense of satisfaction from an agency perspective, but also from a career perspective, from the personnel working with us. They go, I worked in that client, and now 3 years later they're massive, or doing really well, and they might have started on a paid search perspective, but actually now they're doing PR, or now they're doing influencer, or now they're doing digital audio, or whatever other elements of the game that we now offer. Kind of a last question, then we'll kind of sum up. We'll keep people all day, as they say. A bit of advice. If you could give advice, and it's a very open-ended question, but if you could give advice to a client, coming into an agency, they're coming in, and we'll start with Paddy because he's to the left of me here in terms of PR. What advice would you give to a client coming to us saying, right, we know you can work PR, we know you have the right context in the sector, but what can you actually do for me, or what do I need to do?
Yeah, it really, really understanding your audience and who you want to talk to, because maybe it's not as prevalent in 2026, but there was possibly a time for a few years where brands were trying to jump into absolutely everything, sometimes where they belonged and sometimes where they didn't. Young people in particular see through that now. Young people are phenomenally intelligent, and a brand being inauthentic is really transparent now in 2026 more than ever. And then outside of that, a really obvious piece, going back to what was mentioned earlier, but understanding the evolution of AI and how quickly it's moving, and keeping on top of that is really key for us all, but particularly for brands in terms of both the challenges that it faces and how it can help them.
James, we're going left to right.
I think clients should really be more ambitious in the sense of out of the box thinking and testing new things and not be scared. I think what the trend I've seen is that people are starting to really focus on their low funnel activity that's guaranteed to get them sales, and people have moved slightly away. People's generalizing, right? But they're moving away from how you drive consideration for your brand first and foremost before you capture demand off the back of it. And I think don't be afraid to test. Don't be afraid to test and fail, more importantly, because if you fail, you've still learned that doesn't work, and that can feed into future things. So be bold, keep testing, and keep trying to find what does and doesn't work would be my advice.
Good stuff. And Gav?
Kind of ties into what the two lads are saying there, just about embracing change. It's a never evolving industry. Digital marketing is it's a frightening kind of evolution of different things all the time. It's difficult to keep abreast of everything, but do embrace change, do test things, especially AI. There's obviously, there's probably a bit of cynicism with some clients around AI, what it can do, what it can't do, the question is, nobody has really mastered it, It's because it's growing so fast, so quickly. Just test, learn, use AI, use kind of those insights to your advantage. And yeah, just whatever you can take from that.
I might build on that as well, actually, and use AI with caution is what I would say. When it comes to creative and things like that, performance marketing is different. Let the algorithms work, but building a creative now, I think people don't need to be a bit hesitant to jump straight into it.
100%. I mean, authenticity was always really important for brands, but certainly in this era where there's so much AI generated content, people can see through it a mile away. Perhaps now more than ever, it's understanding that, and particularly even the way social media algorithms work and just how absolutely hell-bent each platform is on grabbing your attention in whatever way possible, and knowing that, and creating the content accordingly to make sure it's not that kind of rage-based content capture piece, but something that maybe connects emotionally with the audience.
Yeah, and probably to commit to be it a new channel or a new initiative beyond this kind of the urgent need to we need to see a result after 2 weeks. No, it's not going to happen. You have to let time breathe. You have to let campaigns breathe. You have to let channels breathe. Let them work. Give them 4 or 5 months. See if they're going to work. Okay, then sit down and review it. But there is a tendency, this need to be urgent about everything. Oh my God, we ran a campaign and lads, we turned the ads on this morning. We don't need that.
Yeah.
You need to let stuff breathe. We again, conference myself and Gav were at last week. The authenticity came up hugely in terms of brands, but also in terms of channels. In terms of you can't do exactly the same on TikTok that you can do on Instagram, or you can't do something in your earned media strategy than you can do in a paid media strategy. And 2-3 major brands, always the same messages coming out about being patient, but also being different in terms of how you approach channels. And again, as we've grown the agency to have more channels, to have PR, to have our data team now, to pull on audience information from the likes of GWI and from SimilarWeb and those tools that we are using to help kind of guide ourselves and guide our clients. There is more information there, but nothing's going to work overnight. So that's always my message. And again, it goes back to being a traditional PR person, going back to Paddy's thing. You take a PR retainer on in the early 2000s and you'd be doing a review after 6 months and you'd be measuring out your AER and I've got this, but your book would be 6 months later. There wouldn't be this expectation that you'd have a result immediately. So it is balancing that, and that is a challenge. And that's why we have a head of client services who talks to all the clients and tempers the expectation for immediate results, which I think, in my experience, and I think you'd probably agree on this, the clients who are willing to listen to you and listen to your advice are the clients you'll end up having the best relationship with you, because you can have that back and forth, very honest back and forth around what the channel we're going to do, or the campaign we're going to do, or the media we're going to buy. Okay, anecdotes from your careers to date that you'd like to share, or anything, any kind of campaign that went, oh my God, how did that ever happen? I'm looking at Paddy because of the PR background here particularly.
Well, I'm glad you brought it back to a work scenario rather than a personal scenario. I thought we were a bit before the watershed for some of that. Going back to my pre-PR career to begin with, and that London 2012 piece I mentioned at the beginning is kind of almost hard to believe that you're kind of sitting at the epicenter of the biggest sporting event in the world. As I was for 3 weeks, and the weather was amazing as well in London, by the way. That was like something that a lot of people always remember about it. But I covered Katie Taylor's gold medal boxing match and whatnot. Some might say it was all downhill from there, but it's not the way I look at it, Kieran. Professionally, yeah, it kind of continued on in that vein in terms of major global events, music events, sporting events, and that's really where my passions lie, is that kind of experiential in-person experience, and not to be trying to drive home another message, but perhaps in this era of non-stop AI, it's really something that we do have to kind of reinforce with ourselves, is that those in-person connections are more important than ever. Sorry, I've taken all that time.
No, it's grand.
just really quickly, I think something we pride ourselves on here at Core is we like to be honest with our clients, and those relationships we build with them are built on that honesty. So if things aren't working or if something's gone wrong or whatever, we'll always be open and honest. And I think that's something that not necessarily sets us completely apart, but it sets us apart in the sense of we're always going to tell our clients an honest opinion on something, whether they take that opinion and run with it because they want to go with it, or they can't because of other pressures. That's fine, but we'll always be honest. And I think that's something I pride myself on. I know the guys do too. And I'd love to just keep pushing that forward for anybody else coming into our business.
Mm-hmm. So we'll leave the last word to Gav.
Thank you. So it kind of ties into what James mentioned there, and kind of briefly on what Paddy was saying. It kind of ties into trust and authenticity. So like setting realistic expectations, not just as with the client, but like obviously as an agency as well, of what we can deliver, how we can deliver it, when we can deliver it. Something we can stand over and the client can stand over when they're reporting back to stakeholders. That's a massive part of the foundations when a client comes on board. It's really just, here's what we can deliver. No pie in the sky stuff. No, okay, we can get you this amount of growth. And then in the back end, we're kind of thinking, no, we can't, So just being honest, being open about what we can do. Lots of capabilities there, but again, down to the bottom line of the clients.
Super. That's the holy all of it. My thanks to Gav, to James, and to Paddy. I'm Kieran O'Brien. That was Optimised. And thank you very much.